Have you ever sat in a room full of people listening to everyone talk and thought to yourself, none of this really needs to be said? Maybe you've even smiled quietly while someone tried to prove how clever they were, and you knew, deep down, that silence was the real power. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. There's something profoundly wise about choosing not to speak, and yet still commanding the room. As we get older, something interesting happens. We begin to notice more, not just what people say, but what they don't say. The little glances, the subtle shifts in tone, the way someone fidgets when they feel nervous or insecure. It's like life hands us a different kind of hearing, one that doesn't rely on words at all. And this kind of listening, this silent strength, is something the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche believed held tremendous power. Now, Nietzsche was no ordinary thinker. He wasn't writing for the crowd. He wrote for the individual, someone strong enough to stand alone, someone who knew that stillness can speak louder than shouting. And today, we're going to explore how his ideas can help you use silence not just to stay calm or centered, but to actually outsmart others without ever saying a word. This isn't about playing mind games or manipulating people. It's about knowing when to speak and when not to. It's about understanding the world around you better than most, simply because you're no longer rushing to be heard. And honestly, after 60, that's a gift more valuable than ever. Let's begin with something simple but powerful. Silence as observation. You've probably noticed that when you don't speak right away, when you take a moment and just listen, people will often fill the silence. They'll tell you things they didn't intend to. They'll reveal what they really think. That's because most people are uncomfortable with silence. They rush to fill it, often with words they haven't thought through. And there you are, still quiet, watching. That's power. Nietzsche believed that true strength isn't loud. He said that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And in silence, you start to see your why more clearly. You begin to understand what matters, what doesn't, and how to move with intention. While others are wrapped up in their own noise, you're calmly gathering information, watching, learning, staying sharp. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room to be the smartest. In fact, often the opposite is true. When you stay silent, you give yourself a chance to read the room. You notice who interrupts others, who avoids eye contact, who tries too hard to impress. And once you see all that, well, it's like having a secret map that no one else can read. The next piece of this puzzle is what I like to call the pause, and it's a game changer. Imagine someone asks you a question. Maybe it's a little aggressive, or maybe it's just nosy. Most people would feel the pressure to answer right away, but not you. You take a breath, you pause. That tiny moment of silence, that's where your strength lives. That pause says, I don't need to react on your schedule. It shows control, composure, thoughtfulness. And even if you eventually decide to speak, your words will carry more weight because they weren't rushed. That's how you turn silence into authority. There's something very calming about not being in a hurry to respond. It's not about being passive, it's about being deliberate. You're not just reacting, you're choosing. And every time you choose to pause, to stay centered, to stay quiet when others can't, you win a little more ground. That's the essence of Nietzsche's thinking. Strength of character. Power of restraint, mastery over impulse. Now let me share a story you might relate to. A few years ago, a friend of mine, he's in his 70s now, told me about a time he was at a family gathering. His grown children were debating politics at the dinner table, each one talking over the other, trying to prove their point. It got a little heated. Everyone looked to him to weigh in. He just smiled, took a sip of water, and said nothing. The room fell quiet. Later, one of his grandkids asked, "Why didn't you say anything?" And he replied, "Because none of you were actually listening. You were just waiting for your turn to speak. And I didn't want to be a part of that noise." That moment stuck with them. It stuck with me too, because he didn't need to prove his intelligence. His silence said it all. There's dignity in that kind of silence, especially as we age. We don't need to compete with voices trying to be louder, flashier, or more dramatic. We've lived enough life to know that true wisdom often whispers, and the ones who truly listen. They're the ones worth speaking to anyway. Nietzsche saw silence as strength, not weakness. He believed that self-mastery begins when you stop trying to win every argument and start choosing your battles. And sometimes the best move is no move at all. Just like in chess, a quiet piece sitting in just the right spot can still change the outcome of the game. So the next time you're in a situation where people are talking over each other, where egos are clashing or someone is trying to test your patience, try saying nothing. Just observe. Feel your breath. Let them wonder what you're thinking. That mystery, that stillness, that's your advantage. Because when you know who you are, when you trust your own wisdom, you don't need to shout. You don't need to explain. You can let others talk while you stay rooted, calm, and confident. And that, especially now, is one of the most powerful things you can do. There's a moment in life when you stop trying to prove yourself to everyone else and start standing firmly in your own presence. That moment often comes with age. Not because we become less interested in people, but because we finally begin to understand our own value. And that's where silence becomes more than just the absence of noise. It becomes presence. Real, commanding, unmistakable presence. You've likely experienced it. Maybe you walked into a room and didn't say a word, but people noticed you anyway. That wasn't about what you were wearing or how you stood. It was the quiet confidence you carried. Nietzsche would have called that the mark of someone who has become who they are. Someone who doesn't need to announce their worth. Because when you carry truth within you, it speaks on its own. Now let's talk about one of the most subtle and effective ways silence works in your favor. When someone tries to challenge or provoke you, it might be a family member who always finds a way to poke at you, or someone who seems to enjoy arguing for the sake of it. In the past, you might have taken the bait, raised your voice, tried to make your case. But now, you smile, maybe raise an eyebrow, and stay silent. You'd be amazed at how disarming that is. Because when someone expects a fight and they don't get one, it throws them off. They don't know where to go next, and the more they push, the more your silence says, "This is beneath me." Not in a mean way, not with ego, but with calm awareness. It's a kind of silent boundary, and it's incredibly powerful. See, reacting is easy. Anyone can raise their voice or fire back. But choosing not to? That takes strength. That takes clarity. It says, "I see you. I hear you. And I've decided your words don't deserve mine." That's not cold. That's not rude. That's power, rooted in self-respect. Nietzsche once said, "When you look into the abyss also looks into you." What he meant was, when you spend too much time consumed by chaos, anger, or negativity, you become part of it. But when you remain centered, when you resist getting pulled into someone else's storm, you protect your peace. You stay above the noise. That's what your silence can do. Now let's shift gears a bit. Because silence isn't just something you use with other people. It's something you can use with yourself. And in many ways, that's where the real magic happens. Have you ever taken a quiet walk in the morning, just listening to the birds or feeling the breeze? No phone, no radio, no one talking, just you, your breath, your steps. There's something deeply healing about that kind of silence. It gives your mind a chance to breathe. It gives your heart space to speak. In those moments, you're not trying to impress anyone. You're not worrying about being clever or interesting. You're just being. And in that stillness, you often find answers you didn't even know you were looking for. That's something Nietzsche believed too. He saw solitude, not loneliness, but chosen solitude, as essential to understanding yourself. He called it a form of discipline, a way to refine your thoughts and reclaim your power. And in today's world where noise is everywhere, that kind of silence is more important than ever. Because here's the truth. The world will always try to pull you in 100 directions. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's in a rush. But you don't have to join that race. You've earned the right to slow down, to think before you speak, to say only what matters and to let silence say the rest. And let's be honest, silence is often where we do our best thinking. It's where we reflect on life. It's where we remember who we are when the world isn't demanding we be something else. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. A woman I once knew, sharp as a tack and kind as can be, used to say, "If I can't improve the silence, I don't speak." That stuck with me. Because there's such beauty in not having to fill every moment with sound. Some of the most meaningful moments happen in the quiet. When you sit next to someone you love and don't need to say a word, that's connection. When you look at someone who's wronged you, and instead of shouting back, you let your silence speak, that's dignity. When you listen, not just to reply but to really listen, that's compassion. And all of it comes from mastering your silence. It's not always easy. Sometimes the urge to correct someone or defend yourself can be strong. But when you choose silence, you're not giving up. You're rising above. And the more you do it, the more you realize, not every battle is worth fighting. Not every comment deserves an answer. Not every noise needs to be matched with more noise. Instead, you can sit with yourself in peace, knowing that your silence isn't emptiness. It's full of intention, full of thought, full of strength. And when others finally notice that they can't push your buttons, can't throw you off balance, can't get a rise out of you, well, that's when they realize you're someone they can't outmaneuver. Not because you outtalked them, but because you didn't need to. So the next time you're faced with noise, tension, or someone who's just trying too hard to be right, pause. Take a breath. Let your silence hold the room. And watch how everything shifts in your favor. There's one more way silence can be your ally that's truly magic: creativity. When you give your mind a moment of quiet, you open space for fresh ideas to emerge, ideas you might never have noticed. In the middle of a busy conversation or a noisy environment, think back to a time when a puzzle or problem nagged at you, and then in a quiet moment the solution simply popped into your head. That flash of insight is the gift of silence. Nietzsche believed that the most profound thoughts often arise in solitude. He spoke of the importance of cultivating an inner landscape rich with reflection and imagination. As we grow older, we've accumulated experiences, stories, lessons learned the hard way. When we carve out moments of silence, whether it's sitting on the porch with a cup of tea watching the sunset, or simply pausing before breakfast, we tap into a reservoir of wisdom inside us. And that wisdom can guide our creativity, helping us find new ways to share our life story, solve lingering mysteries, or simply appreciate the beauty around us. Imagine what you could create if you honored those moments of quiet every day. Maybe it's a journal entry, a letter to someone you care about, or even a little sketch of a scene that moves you. You don't need to be an artist or a writer. You just need to listen to the whispers of your own heart. That's how silence becomes a canvas for your soul. Now there's another subtle way silence strengthens you: leadership through example. People watch more than they listen. When you consistently choose calm over chaos, restraint over reactiveness, you teach others, sometimes without a single word. Whether it's guiding grandchildren through a tricky situation, helping friends navigate a conflict, or collaborating with neighbors on a community project, your quiet steadiness becomes its own language of leadership. Think about it. When someone faces a tough decision, they don't ask, "What should I do?" They ask, "What would you do?" And if your response is grounded, thoughtful, and measured, even if you share it in a few calm words or simply demonstrate it through your actions, people will follow that example. Nietzsche admired those who led by living their values, not by shouting them from the rooftops. By mastering your silence, you embody patience, respect, and integrity, the qualities any true leader needs. Of course, none of this means you should never speak. Silence isn't about shutting down communication. It's about speaking when it matters most. Consider the impact of your words when you finally choose to share them after a period of thoughtful quiet. They carry clarity. They carry weight. They carry you. And that selective, intentional use of your voice can move mountains, mend hearts, and inspire change. As you move forward, I encourage you to build a simple practice around silence. Maybe start each morning with just 2 minutes of stillness. No phone, no paper, nothing to distract you. Close your eyes, breathe, and notice what arises. Or perhaps set an intention before a social gathering. I will speak only when I have something true to add. Observe how that changes your interactions. You may find yourself listening more deeply, connecting more genuinely, and even enjoying conversations in a whole new way. In Nietzsche's view, a life well lived isn't measured by the volume of our speech, but by the depth of our being. He believed that the will to power wasn't about dominating others with words, but about mastering yourself, your thoughts, your impulses, your silence. And that mastery, especially later in life, becomes a beacon for others, guiding them toward their own strength. So today I invite you to experiment with silence. Notice how it shifts the energy in a room. Notice how it reveals what truly matters. Notice how it helps you center yourself, make wiser choices, and spark your creativity. Silence isn't emptiness. It's full of possibility. If you've tried any of these approaches, pausing before responding, embracing quiet walks, or choosing thoughtful speech, share your experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear how mastering silence has changed your interactions, sparked new ideas, or simply brought you a sense of peace. If you found this helpful, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more ways to tap into your inner wisdom. And remember, your voice is a treasure, but your silence can be even more powerful. Here's to listening more deeply, speaking more honestly, and living with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing yourself. After all, when you master silence, you outsmart the world, not by saying a single word, but by letting your presence do the talking. There's something quietly enchanting about how silence fuels our creativity, and I want you to picture this. You're seated in your favorite chair, a gentle breeze rustling the curtains, a soft cup of tea warming your hands. No radio, no television, no chatter, just you and the hush of the moment. Maybe you close your eyes and let a memory drift by, or you watch a leaf dance in the air. In that stillness, ideas begin to form almost on their own, like old friends, reintroducing themselves after years apart. That's the power of silence, giving your mind room to roam. Nietzsche believed that our deepest insights come when we step away from the frenzy of everyday life and into our own inner world. Over the years, you've collected stories, wisdom, even solutions to problems you once thought unsolvable. But when life is noisy, those gems stay buried. By carving out regular pockets of quiet, whether a 10-minute pause before breakfast or an unhurried stroll around the block, you allow those treasures to surface. You might find yourself jotting down a memory you'd forgotten, sketching a simple scene from your childhood, or recalling the perfect response to a question you never got to answer. And here's the delightful part. Once you start honoring these moments, creativity becomes less of a sporadic visitor and more of a faithful companion. You'll notice it in conversations too. Picture yourself at your grandchild's school play. Instead of watching through the lens of your phone, you sit quietly, really see the actor's expressions, feel the hum of excitement. Later, you share a single heartfelt comment, something so genuine it stays with everyone long after the curtain falls. That's your creativity shining through silence. But silence doesn't only spark creativity. It can also transform how you lead and connect with others. Think about the people in your life, family, friends, neighbors, who look to you for guidance. Often, they don't need a long lecture. They need calm assurance. By responding with thoughtful brevity, or even just a steady presence, you teach them more than any volume of words could. When a friend is upset and you simply sit by their side, offering your quiet support, you become a pillar of strength. When a neighbor struggles to make a decision and you ask a gentle question rather than giving advice right away, you help them discover their own answer. This is leadership through example, and it's the kind of influence that lasts. Nietzsche admired those who lived their philosophy rather than proclaimed it. He believed that the greatest teachers show us how to be, not just what to think. By mastering your silence, you embody patience, respect, and integrity, the qualities that inspire others to step into their own power. And as you guide through presence rather than persuasion, you'll find relationships deepening in surprising and rewarding ways. Of course, silence and speaking are partners in this dance. There are moments when your voice is needed, When your decades of experience can light the path for someone else, or when your laughter can fill a room with warmth. Choosing when to speak and when to remain silent is itself an art. Speak too often and your words may lose their impact. Speak too little and people may miss what matters most. But when you trust your inner compass, shaped by years of living, you'll know the exact moment to share your wisdom, a story, or even a simple encouragement. Those words will land with clarity and care because they're not just noise, they're intentional gifts. So how do you weave more of this into your daily life? Try this small exercise. Before entering any gathering, be it a family dinner, a card game with friends, or a community event, take a moment to center yourself. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and set a quiet intention. I will listen more than I speak. Notice how that changes the flow of conversation. You'll find yourself drawn to remarks you might otherwise have missed, and your responses will feel more meaningful. You might also explore thinking pauses at home. When a question or challenge arises, give yourself a brief silence, 3 seconds, maybe 5, before jumping in. In that gap, you often sense exactly what needs to be said, or you realize that silence itself is the strongest reply. Over time, these tiny habits build up, and you'll find yourself moving through the world with a steadiness that others admire. In Nietzsche's own life, he embraced solitude, not out of loneliness, but as a disciplined practice. He understood that to sharpen one's mind, one must sometimes withdraw from the crowd. Today, quiet moments can be as simple as sitting by a window watching the clouds drift, or as structured as a daily meditation practice. What matters is consistency. The more you honor silence, the more it becomes the backdrop against which your most profound thoughts and actions stand out. As we draw to a close, remember this. Mastering silence isn't about withdrawing from life. It's about engaging more, fully, seeing more, feeling more, understanding more. It's about letting your presence be the silent invitation that encourages others to listen, to reflect, to connect. It's the gentle power you've earned through every joy and challenge you've faced. If mastering silence has sparked new ideas for you, or if you've already been practicing these habits, please share your story in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you've enjoyed this exploration, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more ways to tap into your inner wisdom. Here's to living with quiet confidence, to speaking only when it matters, and to discovering that sometimes the most powerful conversations happen in the spaces between words. Thank you for watching, and may your days be filled with thoughtful silence and meaningful connection.